This is How on Earth, the show that makes you smarter. I'm Roger Wendell. With me in studio is Michael Big Smoke Slayton and his wife Loritta Flint Woman Slayton. The Slaytons are longtime practitioners of primitive fire making and survival skills out of Loveland, Colorado. Teaching at rendezvous, schools, and outdoor shows, Michael and Loritta have delighted thousands with their Back Up to the Bic demonstrations, how to create a life-saving fire during an emergency when matches and high-tech lighters simply won't do the trick. Michael and Loritta, welcome to KGNU.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here.
Great. Good to have you here. Before we talk about bow drill fire sticks and flint and steel, I'd like to ask you how our ancestors in Africa, Australia, the Americas, Europe, or anywhere else around the planet made fire. What's the history of fire making for our people?
Those different continents that you just mentioned each had a specialized fire-making method. Some had the fire saw with bamboo, fire piston, and the fire, I think I said the fire plow. But here in North America, it was used generally the bow drill fire sticks, and which was where you spun a drill with a bow and a hearth board and created fire, created an ember.
And we're going to get into a demonstration here in just a moment of the bow drill fire stick. But I wanted to ask you first, just a random, unscientific sampling. I picked up a generic lighter at one of the local stores, and it's pretty high-tech as far as fire making goes over the years. Maybe not quite as high-tech as piezoelectric charcoal starters for the grill out in the backyard, but this is the best we've got. And I'm going to try and fire this up for you right now and hopefully not set off the fire alarms here in the station. Okay, well that was relatively easy. There's a child-proof little switch on it that I overcame even at my age. But what's the problem? What's the problem with, say, a Bic-like starter or matches nowadays?
Bic lighters are good. All of us use them to a greater or lesser degree, but Bic lighters do have a vertical limit. Anything with butane or propane tends to, if it gets too cold or too extremely hot, it doesn't function properly. The little canister, the reservoir that holds the fuel runs out. And sometimes when I do archaeology work, I find Bic lighters out in the desert. And I take and will spark the tip. The fuel is obviously gone, but I can still hold up a piece of char cloth that catches the spark and use that empty Bic lighter to make a fire.
And we're going to kind of demonstrate that to a further extent here in just a moment. But I wanted you to also address, if you would, what's happened to matches. I'm a little bit older. I can remember when matches were reliable. Now they seem to melt in my hand. What's taken place? Loritta's nodding her head in agreement.
They have changed the strips on the side, and so they're not solid like they used to be, for one. And when you go to light your match, a lot of times the heads pop off or fizzle. They race towards your fingers, so you have very little time to even work with them. You could probably add a little bit more on the science end of it, Michael.
Well, I think the federal government made an effort to make matches as safe as possible. In the days of where you could take the match and hold it in your finger and strike the head with your fingernail and light it, or shoot it out of a BB gun at a passing car to light it, and do all kinds of tricks.
We don't want to endorse that.
Those days are gone, but there are a few good matches out there.
Well, let's talk about the bow drill then. Let's take this opportunity to explain and demonstrate this and why it would be superior to a match according to your practices. What do you have here laid out on the desk before us?
Okay, on the desk here I have an example of the bow drill fire sticks. I have a bow with a cord. That bow is used to turn the fire spindle. The fire spindle's tip has a charred tip and a cold tip that never gets hot, and that spins in the fire socket that's on the hearthboard. So by virtue of the spinning of the drill, the fire spindle, and the fire socket on the flat hearthboard that lays on the ground, it grinds away and gets very, very hot, blackened.
Can we go ahead and demonstrate that now with our
Sure.
few remaining moments without catching the studio on fire? Let's see what we can generate here.
Okay?
Okay, so you've got your bow in one hand.
Got my bow, my fire drill in the other. I arm the drill in the bow by wrapping the cord around it. And then I take and put the fire end in the socket of the hearthboard.
Okay, and if listeners can imagine this right now, it looks like kind of an ancient setting. We've got this bow drill in action. Michael's getting ready to push the bow back and forth to generate some heat here to start a fire. We don't want to go too far. Okay.
I do have the stone socket that fits in the palm of my hand, which allows me to control it. And so I'm spinning it now. You can hear it squeaking a little.
And it takes a considerable amount of effort. Typically, how long would it take to get an ember going? A minute, a couple of minutes?
15 seconds. I've timed it numerous.
So let's go ahead and see if we can't get a little bit of smoke going here
Okay.
without alerting the fire marshal. Okay, I can smell it. It's certainly starting to emit just a little bit of smoke. Yes, definitely visible smoke. I'm putting my hand over the smoke detector as we speak. Okay,
And now what it's doing, it's already created quite an abundance of black and charred dust. And the dust is where the ember would grow and develop from.
okay, so your recommendation would be, in addition to matches and Bic-like lighters and those kinds of things, that you carry something similar to this, or maybe even flint and steel, with a few remaining moments here.
Many survival experts and outdoors people carry flint and steel, especially because it's light and compact, and they carry a half-sized little fireboard with a bow and a drill. I carry that myself in my backpack.
And what's a good way that folks can learn more about maybe your teaching or making fire by primitive methods in general? Loritta?
We meet regularly with the Tanner Gun Show, and that's one of our outlets, as well as the PE Gun Show. So those are two places that you can find us. We're demonstrating. We have outdoor events such as the Elkfest event in Estes Park in the fall.
And how about a website or another resource?
We are under construction with primitivefiremaking.com, which will have our information hopefully in the near future put together.
Fabulous. Great demonstration. There's not a lot of smoke in the studio. We sure appreciate your time at KGNU this morning. My guests have been Michael and Loritta Slayton of Big Smoke. You can learn more about primitive fire making at primitivefiremaking.com. That's all for this edition of How on Earth. This week's show was produced by Shelley Schlender.
Shelley is also our executive producer, and theme music was written and produced by Josh Cutler.
Can't listen to How on Earth at our regular time? No worries. Just go to howonearthradio.org and subscribe to our podcast using the iTunes button.
Questions or comments? Call the KGNU comment line at 303-447-9911. For How on Earth, the KGNU Science Show, I'm Susan Moran.
And I'm Roger Wendell.
Stand by.
This program is supported by you, the KGNU listener member.